In the glass-walled boardroom, my boss, Mr. Calder, slid the Halcyon folder across the table, away from me deliberately. Effective immediately, he announced to the room, the Halcyon account is being reassigned. Every pair of eyes turned toward me like I'd been demoted in real time, like I'd failed somehow. I kept my face perfectly calm, even though my chest felt tight. My wedding ring suddenly felt heavier on my finger, like a weight reminding me I had something to protect beyond this job. The silence stretched. No one asked questions. No one defended me. They just watched. Calder's mouth lifted in what passed for a professional smile. "Don't embarrass yourself by asking why," he added quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The words landed like a slap disguised as advice. My smartwatch vibrated discreetly against my wrist, a message notification. I glanced down quickly. It was from Sloan, my main contact at Halcyon. Just 2 words that made my pulse spike. "Are you okay?" She knew. Somehow she already knew what was happening, which meant this wasn't a sudden decision. This had been planned, coordinated, announced to the client before it was announced to me. I looked back up at Calder. He was watching me carefully, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to break or argue or cry. I gave him nothing, just a small nod, professional, controlled. But inside, something shifted. Something that had been trusting became watchful. Calder continued speaking, his voice smooth and practiced. He praised team alignment and strategic reorganization while Drew, my replacement, sat across from me, avoiding my gaze completely. Drew looked uncomfortable, which told me he hadn't asked for this. This was Calder's move, not his. Then Calder said the cruelty out loud, wrapped in corporate language. "Some relationships belong to the firm, not to individual employees. We need to remember that." The implication was clear. I'd gotten too close to the client, too personally invested, too possessive of something that wasn't mine. Except I'd built that relationship from nothing. I'd turned Halcyon from a cold lead into our biggest revenue stream through late nights and careful promises and trust earned the hard way. But none of that mattered now. The meeting ended. People filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately. My watch vibrated again. Another message from Sloan. This one longer, more urgent. I waited until I was alone in the hallway before reading it. "He's saying things about you. Call me. Please." My hand stayed steady as I typed back. "In 5 minutes." Then I walked to the stairwell, closed the door behind me, and finally let myself breathe. The fear I'd been holding back rushed through me, not fear of losing the account. Fear of what Calder might have said to justify taking it. Fear of what story he was already telling. My name is Hannah Wynn, and I'm 31 years old. I've been married to Micah for 4 years, and I've survived enough corporate politics to know when a storm is manufactured versus when it's natural. This storm was manufactured. I'd spent 2 years building the Halcyon relationship from absolutely nothing. They'd been a cold lead in our database, a company that had rejected our firm 3 times before I even started. But I'd done my research, found common ground, built trust slowly. Now they were our largest client, and Calder was taking credit by taking control. I called Sloan from the stairwell, keeping my voice steady and professional. She answered immediately. "Hannah, what the hell is happening?" I could hear the confusion and concern in her voice. "You tell me," I said quietly. "What did Calder say?" There was a pause. Then Sloan spoke carefully, like she was choosing her words to minimize damage. "He called me this morning. Said you'd requested to step back from our account due to personal instability. That the firm was concerned about your well-being. Personal instability." The words hit like ice water, carefully chosen, professionally lethal, impossible to disprove without looking defensive. "I never requested anything," I said clearly, "and I'm completely stable." "I know," Sloan said immediately. "That's why I'm calling. Something feels wrong about this." Then her voice dropped even lower. "Hannah, he also asked me something strange. He asked if you'd ever broken confidentiality rules or behaved inappropriately with client information." My blood went cold. This wasn't just reassignment. This was set up. I thanked Sloan and promised to call her back soon. Then I sat on the stairwell steps and forced myself to think clearly. Calder wasn't just taking my client, he was building a narrative. A story where I was unstable, unprofessional, possibly unethical. A story that would justify not just reassignment, but potential termination. And he was doing it carefully, strategically, planting seeds with the client first, then with HR, then probably with other colleagues. I needed to understand his pattern before I could counter it. So instead of confronting him immediately, I decided to watch, to observe, to gather evidence the way he was clearly gathering ammunition against me. Over the next few days, I noticed the changes. Small at first, then more obvious. Drew suddenly had meetings I wasn't invited to. My access to certain Halcyon files became temporarily restricted due to system updates. And Calder started dropping careful hints around the office, always within earshot of others. Hannah's been emotional lately. Hannah's going through some personal challenges. We're supporting Hannah through a difficult time. Each statement designed to sound caring while actually undermining my credibility, making me seem fragile, unstable, a liability. Then I saw something that made everything click into focus. A calendar invitation that I'd been accidentally copied on, probably due to an automated system. Halcyon Tower Acquisition Strategy, with Calder listed as the lead. I stared at that title for a full minute, my heart pounding. Halcyon Tower, the luxury skyscraper development project. And not just any project. My family's historic real estate legacy. Halcyon Tower was the skyscraper my late grandfather had developed 40 years ago in downtown. A beautiful Art Deco building that had been in my family for generations. But family drama and complicated inheritance issues had meant I'd never been allowed any real involvement in managing it. My aunt and uncle controlled the property, and they'd made it clear from the beginning that I wasn't qualified to have any say in its future. Now Calder was targeting it, using his connection to Halcyon Industries, our client, to position a potential acquisition. And he'd removed me from the account right before starting those discussions. This wasn't coincidence. This was calculated. He knew about my family connection, he'd probably done research on me, found my vulnerability, and was now exploiting it. That night, my mother called. Her voice was shaky and confused. "Hannah, sweetheart, something strange is happening. Your aunt got a call today from someone asking about selling Halcyon Tower. They said there was urgent interest from a buyer. Do you know anything about this?" I closed my eyes. "I'm looking into it, Mom. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'll call you back." After we hung up, I sat in my car in the office parking garage for 20 minutes, just thinking. Calder wasn't just attacking my career, he was attacking my family legacy, using my own professional connections to undermine my personal history. It was vicious, sophisticated, and probably more effective than he even realized. Because my family already doubted me, already thought I wasn't capable. Calder's whisper campaign would find fertile ground. The next day, Calder showed up at my desk after most people had left for the evening. He moved with that casual confidence of someone who felt completely in control. "Hannah," he said, leaning against my cubicle wall. "How are you holding up?" I looked up at him calmly. "Fine. Why?" He smiled. "Just checking. Big transitions can be stressful." Then he mentioned my hometown. Casually, like he was making small talk. "Funny coincidence about that Halcyon Tower project. I saw in your personnel file that you have family connections to the original development." My stomach tightened, but my face stayed neutral. "It's not really my area," I said carefully. He nodded slowly. "I mean, a person with your complicated family situation probably shouldn't be involved in sensitive negotiations anyway. Conflict of interest, emotional entanglements, you understand." The implication was clear. My family connections made me a liability, not an asset. He was framing my knowledge and history as problems, not strengths. "I appreciate your concern," I said evenly. He smiled again. Then he dropped a sealed envelope on my keyboard. Official company letterhead. "Just some routine paperwork. HR wants you to review and sign. Performance documentation, standard stuff." He walked away before I could respond. I opened the envelope with steady hands. Inside was a formal document titled Performance Concern, Behavioral Observations. It detailed alleged incidents of emotional instability, unprofessional conduct, and concerning behavior. None of it was true. All of it was documented as if it were fact. This was the paper trail. The foundation for whatever he was planning next. The next morning, HR called me in. The representative, a woman named Keisha, who I'd always thought was fair, smiled apologetically. "This is just routine, Hannah, nothing to worry about." But her eyes were glued to a document on her desk. A form I'd definitely never signed. The form alleged that I'd violated confidentiality protocols with a high-value client, shared sensitive information inappropriately, created risk for the firm. I kept my voice even and professional. Can you show me the specific evidence of these allegations? Keisha shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Calder has provided documentation. We're required to follow up on any reported concerns. What documentation exactly? I pressed. She hesitated, looked at her computer screen, looked back at me. Internal emails, meeting notes, client feedback. Can I see them? Another pause. Mr. Calder said he'd provide copies during your formal review meeting, which meant she didn't actually have the evidence herself. She was working off Calder's word, his version of events, his carefully constructed narrative. When is this formal review? I asked. End of the week, Friday at 3. 3 days away. 3 days for Calder to build his case. 3 days for me to figure out what he was really doing and how to stop it. I thanked Keisha and left her office. Walked straight to my car. Called Micah. When he answered, I didn't cry. I just said, I need you to help me think clearly. Something's happening and I need to understand the pattern. That evening, Micah and I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop, a notepad, and coffee. He didn't tell me to breathe or calm down or stop worrying. He just asked the right question. Who benefits if you look unstable? I thought about it. Calder gets the client, gets the Halcyon Tower deal, gets to be the hero who saved a difficult situation. Micah nodded. And if you fight back? I look emotional, vindictive, exactly like he's been describing me. We started laying out timelines. When had my access been restricted? When had the Whisper campaign started? When had the HR documentation appeared? The pattern was clear, systematic, professional, ruthless. Then Micah found something in my email that made us both go still. He'd been checking my account settings, looking for anything unusual. Hannah, there's an auto-forward rule set up in your email. Did you create this? I leaned over to look. A rule that automatically forwarded any emails containing keywords like Halcyon, confidential, client strategy to an external email address. I never set that up, I said, my voice tight. When was it created? Micah checked the timestamp. 3 weeks ago, right before Calder started the reassignment process. Someone had accessed my email, set up a rule to forward my client communications to an external address, created a pipeline of my confidential work, and I had a terrible suspicion I knew exactly who. But I didn't delete the rule. Instead, I said something that surprised even me. Leave it running. If he wants a story, let him write it, while we watch where it goes. Over the next 2 days, we monitored where my emails were being forwarded. Micah had IT skills from his previous job, and he knew how to trace digital footprints without alerting anyone. The forwarded address pinged back with a name that made everything click into horrible place. The external email belonged to a private real estate broker, the same broker who'd contacted my aunt about Halcyon Tower. Calder wasn't just stealing my client relationship, he was stealing my client communications to gain insider information about the tower deal, using my own emails to understand negotiation strategies, pricing expectations, family dynamics, everything. It was sophisticated corporate espionage, and it was probably illegal. But proving it without exposing that I knew would be tricky. I needed to be careful, strategic, smarter than he was expecting. That afternoon, Sloan messaged me again, this time asking if we could meet off-site, somewhere private. I suggested a neutral cafe across town. When I arrived, she was already there, looking tense and uncomfortable. I didn't know if I should tell you this, she said immediately. But I asked Calder directly why you were removed from our account. I waited, my heart pounding. He told me you were spiraling, that the firm was concerned about your mental health, that keeping you on our account would be irresponsible. She paused, watching my reaction. But I've worked with you under pressure, Hannah. I've seen you handle crises, and you've never once seemed unstable. Relief flooded through me. She didn't believe him. Thank you for trusting your own judgment, I said quietly. Then Sloan did something that changed everything. She slid her phone across the table, an email open on the screen. It was from Calder to Halcyon's executive team. The subject line read, Account transition, confidential. The body of the email was brief but devastating. Hannah Wynne is currently experiencing personal difficulties that compromise her professional judgment. For Halcyon's protection, we're reassigning the account immediately. Please direct all inquiries to me personally. Hannah is a liability we can no longer risk. I stared at that email, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Calder hadn't just reassigned me. He'd actively told the client I was a liability, had poisoned my reputation while positioning himself as the solution. "There's more," Sloane said quietly. She scrolled down to another email. This one was even worse. Calder had sent it 2 days ago, right around the time he'd started pushing the tower acquisition discussions. "Given Hannah's family complications regarding the Halcyon Tower property, we need to expedite our acquisition strategy before she causes unnecessary noise or interference. Her emotional investment in the property makes her a risk factor." He was using my family connection as a weapon, framing my legitimate history with the tower as emotional instability, rushing a deal before I could interfere. It was calculated, ruthless, and it revealed something important. He wasn't just ambitious. He was willing to destroy people to get what he wanted. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Sloane. She met my eyes directly. "Because he also sent me another email, a private one." She pulled up a third message. "He offered me a favor, said if I helped him move the tower deal forward quickly, he'd give me insider access to competitor bids on other projects, information that would help Halcyon win contracts." My breath caught. That was illegal. Corporate misconduct. Possibly securities fraud depending on the details. "He's not just ruthless," I said slowly. "He's reckless." Sloane nodded. "And he thinks no one is watching." She paused. "He's meeting with the tower broker tonight, at the Riverside Hotel, 7 p.m. He thinks no one knows." I looked at her carefully. "Are you telling me this because you want me to do something?" "I'm telling you this because the truth matters," she said simply. I didn't crash Calder's meeting. I didn't confront him dramatically or make a scene. Instead, I attended as unexpected support. Sloane had invited me last minute, framing it as bringing additional expertise to the discussion. Calder's face tightened when he saw me walk in, but he couldn't object without looking suspicious. The meeting took place in a hotel conference room. Professional, corporate. The broker was there, along with 2 representatives from Halcyon. Calder controlled the conversation, speaking about Halcyon Tower like it was already his deal to make. "We'll acquire it at a favorable price," he said confidently. "The family is motivated to sell. There's pressure, emotional complications, standard inheritance drama. We can use that." I sat quietly, taking notes, observing. My face gave away nothing. Then Calder made his mistake. He turned to me mid-sentence, probably trying to make me uncomfortable, trying to prove he was in control. "Hannah, you understand family dynamics around inheritance. Tell them how emotional families can get when property and legacy are involved." The room turned toward me. I smiled softly, calmly. "Families get emotional when someone tries to steal what they didn't earn," I said simply. A few people in the room laughed uncertainly, not sure if it was a joke. Calder's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not what I meant." "I know exactly what you meant," I replied evenly. Then I excused myself, citing another appointment. As I walked out, I sent one message. Quick, precise. To a competitor broker I'd researched earlier. "Are you interested in a legitimate Halcyon Tower acquisition discussion? I have insider knowledge, clean offer, fair terms." My phone flashed with a reply before I even reached my car. "Absolutely. Are you serious?" I typed back. "Completely. And I'm bringing proof of improper solicitation by a competing party." That night, my mother called again. Her voice was different this time, shaking but also angry. "Your aunt just told me that selling Halcyon Tower is best for everyone. She said a buyer is ready and we shouldn't complicate things." I closed my eyes. Did she say who convinced her of that? She mentioned someone from your company helped her understand the opportunity, someone who explained how family legacies can become burdens. My company. Calder was pushing from both sides now. Professional and personal, using my own workplace to manipulate my own family. "Mom, I need you to trust me. Don't sign anything. Tell Aunt Patricia not to sign anything. Give me 1 week." "Hannah, she's not going to listen to me. She thinks you're too emotionally involved." That phrase again, emotionally involved. Calder's language spreading through my family like a virus. I'm not emotionally involved, I said firmly. I'm strategically positioned. There's a difference. After we hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from my aunt directly. Don't fight this, Hannah. Mr. Calder is helping us navigate a complex situation. Sometimes you need to let go of things that weren't meant for you. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I called my competitor broker contact and scheduled a meeting for the next morning. Because if Calder wanted to use my family against me, I'd use my knowledge to protect them. Even if they didn't understand yet. Even if they thought I was the problem. I knew the truth, and truth eventually speaks louder than manipulation. The next day, Calder summoned me to his office. No HR present, no witnesses, just him, me, and whatever trap he'd prepared. He gestured to a chair across from his desk, smiled that professional smile that never reached his eyes. Hannah, I want to make this transition easier for you. He slid a folder across the desk. This is a generous severance package. Very generous. If you sign an NDA and step away gracefully, the firm will support you financially while you find your next opportunity. I opened the folder. The numbers were significant. More than I'd expected. More than someone would offer unless they were very motivated to buy silence. What exactly am I agreeing not to discuss? I asked calmly. Just standard confidentiality, client relationships, internal processes, nothing unusual. I flipped through the pages. The language was broad, vague. It would prevent me from talking about anything related to Halcyon, the tower, or Calder's conduct. This seems excessive for a standard transition, I observed. He leaned back in his chair. We want to protect everyone involved, including you. Then his tone shifted, became softer, almost kind, which made it more dangerous. If you don't sign this, Hannah, I'll have to move forward with the performance review, and I'll need to be completely honest about my concerns, including concerns that might affect your reputation beyond this firm. The threat was clear, but deniable. Are you threatening me? I asked quietly. I'm offering you options, he corrected. You can leave with dignity and compensation, or you can fight and lose everything, including your husband's respect when he hears the version of you I've been documenting. The mention of Micah made my hands tighten on the folder, but I kept my voice steady. I need time to review this with a lawyer. You have until Friday, he said. The same day as my performance review. Convenient. That evening, Sloane called me directly. Not texted, called. Her voice was urgent but controlled. Halcyon's leadership wants a meeting, with you specifically. Not Drew. Not Calder. They have questions only you can answer. My heart raced. When? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Their downtown office. I hung up and immediately called Micah. It's happening. Whatever this is, it's coming to a head. The next day, I walked into Halcyon's executive conference room. 3 people were there. The CFO, the VP of operations, and Sloane. No Calder. I sat down, keeping my composure even though my pulse was racing. The CFO spoke first. Miss Wynn, we've received conflicting information about your role transition. We'd like to hear your perspective. I took a breath, chose my words carefully. I never asked to leave your account. I've never leaked confidential information. I've never behaved unprofessionally, and I can prove it. The VP leaned forward. Mr. Calder has provided extensive documentation suggesting otherwise. Then I'd like to see that documentation, I said calmly, because if it exists, someone created it without my knowledge. Sloane slid a tablet across the table. This is what he sent us. I reviewed the emails, the meeting notes, the alleged complaints, all of it supposedly from me or about me, and all of it false. I never wrote these emails, I said clearly, and I can prove when they were actually created versus when they claim to be from. I pulled out my own laptop, showed them the email forwarding rule, the timestamps, the external address. Someone has been accessing my communications without authorization, creating a false narrative, and using it to manipulate both me and you. The CFO's expression changed, hardened. That external address, he said slowly. That's connected to the broker we're negotiating with about Halcyon Tower. I nodded. Yes, and Mr. Calder set up that connection. I let the silence do the work. Let them process what I'd just shown them. Evidence, timestamps, digital footprints, not emotions or accusations. Just facts. The VP spoke next, his voice careful. You're alleging that Mr. Calder accessed your email, forwarded your communications to a third party, and used that information for personal gain? I'm showing you the evidence, I corrected. You can draw your own conclusions. The CFO pulled up something on his tablet, frowned. We've been wondering how certain confidential details about our negotiation strategy ended up in competitor proposals, information that should have been internal only. Information that was in my emails, I said quietly. Emails that were being forwarded without my knowledge or consent. Sloan added, he also offered me insider information on competitor bids, in exchange for expediting the tower deal. The room went very quiet. That was corporate misconduct, possibly illegal depending on the specifics. The CFO stood up. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Ms. Wynn. We'll need to investigate further. I understand, I said. But you should know something else. I've been in contact with another broker about the tower, a legitimate one, and I'm prepared to make my own offer. The VP looked surprised. You're purchasing the property? I'm protecting it, I corrected, from people who see it as just another transaction instead of a legacy. The CFO nodded slowly. We appreciate your honesty. We'll be in touch. As I stood to leave, the door opened, and Calder walked in, smiling like he owned the space. He saw me and his smile faltered for just a second. Then he recovered. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. The CFO looked at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Actually, your timing is perfect. We have some questions about email security protocols. Calder entered the room with complete confidence, like he'd been in control this entire time. He probably thought he was walking into a meeting he'd orchestrated, a meeting where I'd be exposed and he'd be vindicated. Instead, he saw me sitting there calmly. Saw the executives looking at him with carefully neutral expressions. Saw Sloan with her arms crossed. Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. Just for a moment. Then his professional mask snapped back, into place. I'm protecting Halcyon from a distracted employee, he said smoothly, addressing the room. Hannah has been struggling personally, and I've been trying to transition her gracefully. The CFO didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his tablet toward Calder. Can you explain these email forwarding logs? Calder leaned forward, squinting at the screen. I watched his face carefully, saw the moment he recognized what he was looking at, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. I'm not familiar with those, he said carefully. That's odd, the VP said, because they originate from Ms. Wynn's account but route through your administrative access. Calder opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. If there's a technical issue, IT should investigate. Then Sloan did something I hadn't expected. She turned her own tablet toward him, showed him the email he'd sent her, the one offering insider bid information. Would you like to explain this? She asked quietly. His smile faltered completely now. For a full second, he looked trapped. Then he tried to reframe. Deflect. That's a misunderstanding. Hannah has been unstable. This is exactly the kind of confusion I've been trying to protect everyone from. But his voice had an edge now, defensive, almost desperate. I didn't say anything, didn't argue. I just asked one calm, clear question. If I'm so unstable, Mr. Calder, why did you need to forge an entire paper trail to prove it? The room went completely silent. Calder stared at me. The executives stared at Calder. The tension was thick enough to cut. The CFO spoke next, his voice measured and serious. Mr. Calder, we're going to need you to step outside while we consult with our legal team. Calder's composure cracked visibly. This is absurd. You're listening to someone who's clearly having a breakdown. We're listening to evidence, the VP corrected, and the evidence suggests serious misconduct. The CFO stood. Security will escort you out of the building. Your company access is being suspended pending investigation. You can't do that, Calder said, his voice rising slightly. I'm the one protecting this firm. You're the one we need to investigate, the CFO said firmly. Two security officers appeared in the doorway. Calder looked at them, then at me, then back at the executives. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, might cause a scene. Instead, he walked out with rigid dignity, his face white. After he left, the CFO turned to me. Ms. Wynn, I apologize. We should have investigated sooner. I nodded, accepting the apology but not celebrating it. Because this wasn't over yet. Calder still had allies, still had influence, and wounded pride makes people dangerous. But I'd taken the first step. I'd told the truth calmly, presented evidence clearly, and let the facts speak for themselves. That afternoon, I drove to my family's lawyer and filed proper paperwork for a legitimate acquisition offer on Halcyon Tower. Not rushed, not pressured, just clean, fair, and protective of the legacy my grandfather had built. When my aunt called that evening, angry and confused, I answered calmly, "I'm making an offer on the tower, a real one. Fair market value, legal, transparent, and protective of the family legacy." "Where did you get this kind of money?" she demanded. "From people who trust my judgment," I said simply, "and from my own work. I've been preparing for this longer than you know." Over the next several days, I watched the consequences unfold quietly but decisively. People at the office suddenly avoided Calder's vicinity. Conversations stopped when he walked by. His door stayed closed for hours at a time. Drew returned a folder to my desk without speaking, just a small nod of acknowledgement. HR stopped using the word routine when referring to my situation. The whispers shifted. Now they were about him, not me. About what he'd done. About the pattern people were starting to notice. Because investigations have a way of revealing more than just the immediate issue. Once people started looking at Calder's behavior, they found other instances. Other employees who'd been quietly sidelined. Other situations where documentation appeared conveniently. Other times when people's reputations had been systematically destroyed to benefit him. I didn't participate in the gossip, didn't add fuel to the fire. Just kept my head down and did my work. Then I received an email from Halcyon's executive team. The subject line made my breath catch, account partnership proposal. I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Miss Wynn, after careful review and consideration, Halcyon Industries has decided to move our account relationship, not to another firm member, but to you directly. We'd like to discuss terms for working with your independent consultancy should you choose to establish one. We value trust above all else. And you've demonstrated trustworthiness where others have not." I read it 3 times. They weren't just defending me, they were choosing me. Over the firm, over Calder's replacement, over the entire corporate structure. They were choosing the person they trusted. Exactly like the title I'd never forget. My boss took my biggest client to humble me. He didn't know who they trusted more. I didn't celebrate immediately. First, I needed to understand the full scope of what this meant. I called Sloan that evening. "Did you advocate for this?" I asked. "No," she said honestly. "The executives made this decision themselves, but I did tell them that you were the only person who'd ever been completely honest with us, even when it would have been easier to stay quiet." That night, Micah and I sat at our kitchen table again, this time with different paperwork, LLC formation documents, business insurance applications, client contract templates. "You're really doing this," he said, not quite a question. "I'm really doing this," I confirmed. Within 48 hours, I'd filed everything properly. Submitted my resignation from the firm with a brief, professional letter. No insults, no accusations. Just a simple statement that I was pursuing independent opportunities. Halcyon signed with my new consultancy within a week. The contract was fair, respectful, built on the relationship we'd developed over 2 years. Then I did something Calder would never have anticipated. I placed a competing offer on Halcyon Tower. Not rushed, not pressured. Clean, fair, and protective of the legacy. The offer came with detailed plans for preservation, community use, and family involvement. It came with respect for what my grandfather had built. It came with knowledge Calder couldn't match because he'd only seen the property as an asset. My aunt called, her voice shrill. "How do you have this kind of money?" "Strategic partnerships," I said calmly. "Investors who believe in preservation over profit, and my own savings. I've been building toward this for longer than anyone realized." The truth was, I didn't have all the money myself. But Halcyon had connected me with investors who valued integrity, who'd seen how I handled the situation with Calder and wanted to work with someone who chose truth over convenience. Meanwhile, Calder's professional world was crumbling. Not because of me. Not because I'd launched some revenge campaign, because patterns once exposed tend to reveal themselves fully. Regulators started asking questions about the email forwarding and information sharing. Other clients reviewed their account transitions. Partners at the firm began distancing themselves publicly. The investigations expanded beyond just my situation. They found other instances, other forwarding rules, other employees who'd been systematically undermined. The pattern was undeniable, and Calder had no defense that didn't make him look worse. His allies went silent. Former supporters suddenly weren't involved in his decisions. The network he'd built through manipulation fell apart when people realized they might be liable for his actions. One evening, about 3 weeks after everything started, I was leaving my new office space late. I walked to my car in the parking garage, keys in hand. A voice called my name from behind. I turned. Calder stood near a concrete pillar, looking smaller somehow, less polished. His tie was loosened. His confident smile was gone. "Hannah," he said, his voice low and tight. "We need to talk." I stopped but kept distance between us. "I don't think we do." He took a step closer. "You don't understand what you've done. You've destroyed my career." "I told the truth," I said simply. "Your career destroyed itself." His hands clenched. "I could have made you. I could have helped you advance. Instead, you chose to be difficult." I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked at him. Saw the man who'd tried to humiliate me into silence. Who'd manipulated my family. Who'd built his success on other people's stolen work. "You didn't lose because I fought dirty," I said quietly. "You lost because you trained me to stay calm." Calder's face twisted with anger he could no longer hide. "This isn't over." "Actually," I said calmly, "it is. You're being investigated by 3 different oversight bodies. Your firm is cooperating fully, and your reputation is finished." I turned toward my car. "The only question is how much worse you make it by continuing to threaten people." He didn't follow, didn't say anything else. Just stood there in the parking garage while I drove away. I didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel victorious, just tired and clear, like I'd been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. The next few weeks brought more closure. The firm settled quietly, agreeing to professional references that wouldn't damage my new business. HR apologized formally and revised their complaint investigation procedures. Drew sent me a private message. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up. You handled that with more grace than I could have." But the real resolution came from my family. My aunt requested a meeting. Professional, formal, at the tower property itself. She stood in the lobby, looking uncomfortable. "Your offer is better," she said stiffly. "More thoughtful, more respectful of what Dad built." She met my grandfather. Her father, the man who trusted me with his stories about this building. "It's not about better," I said gently. "It's about what this place means and protecting that meaning." She nodded slowly. "I underestimated you." "A lot of people did," I said. "That's okay. I'm used to proving them wrong quietly." We completed the acquisition properly, legally, with family involvement and community input. The tower would be preserved, honored, protected. Everything my grandfather had wanted. The investigation into Calder's conduct concluded about 2 months later. The firm released a statement about personnel changes and updated ethical guidelines. Corporate speak for, "We fired him and we're trying not to get sued." Calder himself disappeared from professional networks. LinkedIn profile gone. Industry event attendance stopped. The Whisper Network suggested he'd moved to a different city, trying to restart somewhere people didn't know his history. I didn't follow his trajectory, didn't care where he landed. He'd made his choices. Now he'd live with the consequences. What I cared about was building something better. My consultancy grew, not explosively, not dramatically, just steadily, built on relationships and trust and actual competence. Halcyon referred other clients. Those clients referred more. Within 6 months, I had a team of 3. Within a year, we'd moved to a proper office space, in the tower. My tower. Our tower. Halcyon Industries leased several floors for their regional headquarters. They wanted to be part of the building's history, wanted to support the preservation effort. It felt right. Fishurke. The people who'd trusted me when I had nothing, now sharing space in the building I'd fought to protect. Micah came to the tower's reopening ceremony. We stood on the observation floor at sunset, looking out over the city. "You did it," he said quietly. I nodded. "We did it. You helped me see the pattern. Help me stay calm when I wanted to react." He squeezed my hand. "You would have figured it out. You always do." My mother was there too. She'd apologized months earlier for doubting me, for letting my aunt's opinions override her own judgment. "I should have defended you," she'd said. "Should have trusted that you knew what you were doing." I'd forgiven her. because holding grudges takes more energy than I wanted to spend. The tower's grand reopening was covered by local business media. They called it a preservation success story. They interviewed me about the acquisition, the renovation plans, the community partnerships. "What made you fight for this building?" one reporter asked. I thought about how to answer honestly. "It wasn't about fighting," I said finally. "It was about protecting something that mattered. My grandfather built this with integrity. I wasn't going to let it be consumed by people who only saw dollar signs." The reporter liked that quote. It ended up as the headline. But what I didn't tell the reporter was the personal part. The part about Calder trying to use my own family legacy as leverage against me. The part about being systematically undermined in my own workplace. The part about documentation and forwarded emails and manufactured instability. I didn't share that because it wasn't necessary. The outcome spoke for itself. The people who'd tried to humble me had lost, not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd simply refused to be destroyed. Because I'd stayed calm when they expected chaos. Because I'd built evidence when they expected emotions. Because I'd trusted my own judgment when everyone told me to doubt it. At the reception after the reopening, Sloan found me. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing us what integrity looks like, for not playing games, for treating us like partners instead of transactions." I smiled. "That's just good business." "It's rare business," she corrected, "and it matters more than you know." Later that night, alone in the tower's executive office that had once been my grandfather's, I sat at his old desk, found a photo of him in one of the drawers. Young, confident, proud. I'd never really known him as an adult. He died when I was 19, before I'd built my career, before I'd understood what legacy actually meant. But I understood now. Legacy wasn't about buildings or money or prestige. It was about integrity, about doing things the right way even when shortcuts were available, about protecting what mattered even when people said you couldn't, and he'd taught me that without ever saying it directly. Just by building something worth protecting. About 6 months after everything settled, I received an unexpected message. Through LinkedIn. From someone I'd never met but whose name I recognized from the investigations. Another woman who'd been systematically undermined by Calder at a previous firm. "I just wanted to thank you," she wrote, "for speaking up, for documenting everything, for not letting him do it again." She explained that she'd been too afraid to report his behavior when it happened to her. Had taken the severance, had signed the NDA, had walked away quietly. "But when his pattern became public because of your case, I was able to break my NDA, to add my evidence, to make sure he couldn't do this to anyone else." I wrote back immediately. "You don't need to thank me. I just told the truth. You were brave enough to support it." But her message stayed with me, because it reminded me that speaking up isn't just about your own situation. It's about the next person, the pattern that needs breaking, the system that needs changing. I thought about all the people who'd been quietly destroyed by workplace manipulation, who'd been told they were too emotional, too unstable, too difficult, who'd been systematically erased from their own accomplishments. I thought about how many of them never fought back because fighting back seemed impossible, seemed risky, seemed like it would just confirm everything their abusers said about them. And I understood why I'd been so careful, so calm, so focused on evidence instead of emotion. Because emotion gets dismissed, evidence gets investigated. About a year after everything started, the firm where I'd worked underwent major restructuring. New leadership, new ethics policies, new investigation procedures. They reached out and asked if I'd consult on their updated protocols. "You understand what went wrong," the new managing partner said, "and how to prevent it from happening again." I stood on the tower's observation floor one evening, alone, watching the city lights come on as sunset faded. This floor had been closed during the acquisition fight, closed during the renovation, but now it was open again, restored to how my grandfather had designed it, all glass and clean lines and breathtaking views. My phone rang. It was Drew, my former colleague who'd been given my account. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling," he said. "Of course. I wanted you to know something. The firm officially apologized today, in writing, to everyone affected by Calder's conduct, and they're setting up a fund, for people whose careers were damaged by workplace manipulation, professional counseling, legal support, fresh start grants. I felt something loosen in my chest. That's good. That's really good. It's because of you, Drew said. Because you showed that speaking up works, that evidence matters, that calm resistance is powerful. After we hung up, I stayed on the observation floor for another hour, just thinking about everything that had happened, everything I'd learned. Micah joined me eventually, bringing coffee and sitting beside me on the bench I'd installed near the windows. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. I'm just thinking about how Calder tried to humble me by taking what I'd built, tried to make me small by taking credit for my work, tried to destroy my reputation to hide his own misconduct. I paused, smiled slightly, and I responded by building something no one can reassign, by protecting a legacy he could never touch, by proving that trust matters more than manipulation. Micah nodded. He underestimated you. Everyone did, I said. But that's okay. I'm used to being underestimated. It makes the outcome more satisfying. The city spread out below us, lights and possibilities. A future I'd built through integrity instead of shortcuts, through evidence instead of emotion, through trust instead of control. And I knew, standing there, that this was what winning actually looked like. Not revenge, not destruction, just the quiet power of being unreachable, unbreakable, undeniable. He tried to humble me by taking what I built, I said quietly. So I built something no one can reassign.